You ever have one of those moments when life feels just simple? Like the kind of memory you know will stay with you forever? That's exactly how I felt on that hot summer afternoon, watching my son, Ethan, set up his very first lemonade stand. He was only 9 years old, but the excitement on his face could have lit up the entire neighborhood. He had begged me for weeks to let him try it. "Dad, I want to earn my own money. I'll make the best lemonade in the world." His words had been echoing in my ears, and finally, I gave in. We got some cups, a little folding table, a pitcher of fresh lemonade, and a cardboard sign he had decorated with yellow markers and stickers. The crooked letters read, "Ice cold lemonade, 50 cents." I still remember the smell of those lemons we squeezed together in the kitchen, sweet and sour at the same time, sticky juice dripping onto the counter. He was so proud, stirring in the sugar with a wooden spoon, humming like a little chef on a mission. To me, it wasn't just lemonade. It was my son's first taste of independence. We set up the table right at the edge of our driveway. The sun was blazing, kids were riding bikes, and neighbors were walking dogs. Ethan stood behind his stand, chest puffed out, a smile plastered across his face. And to my surprise, people actually stopped. "Hey, buddy, I'll take a cup," Mr. Thompson from across the street said, fishing $1 out of his wallet. Ethan's eyes lit up. He poured carefully, handed it over, and whispered to me, "Dad, he gave me a whole $1." "Keep the change, champ," Mr. Thompson chuckled, ruffling his hair. One by one, neighbors came. Some bought lemonade just to support him, others actually loved the taste. Laughter filled the air as kids crowded around, coins jingling, and Ethan's little cash jar started filling up. Every time someone dropped money in, his grin got wider. It was perfect. But of course, perfection never lasts. Across the street, I noticed her. Karen. Now, every neighborhood seems to have one, right? The person who can't just let things be. The one who finds something to complain about even when the world is spinning just fine. Ours lived 3 houses down, and I swear she had binoculars glued to her face half the time, scanning for violations. She stood there, on her porch, arms crossed tight, lips pursed like she'd bitten into a lemon herself. At first I thought maybe she was just curious, but then she pulled out her phone. I didn't think much of it, until about 10 minutes later, she marched across the street. "Excuse me," she said, her voice sharp as broken glass. "Do you have a permit for this?" Ethan looked up at her, confused. What?" "A permit," she repeated, tapping her foot. "This is a business. You can't just sell things out here without approval. It's against the HOA rules." I tried to keep calm, even though my blood was starting to boil. "It's just a kid's lemonade stand, Karen. He's 9 years old. He's not opening a restaurant." "That doesn't matter," she snapped back. "Rules are rules, and I'm on the HOA board, so I know the rules." Ethan's face fell. He looked down to his shoes, gripping the pitcher like he'd done something wrong. That broke my heart. I crouched beside him and whispered, "Don't worry, buddy. You're not in trouble." Then I stood and faced her. "Look, it's harmless. Nobody's complaining. In fact, people are enjoying it." "Well, I'm complaining," Karen fired back, "and if I don't shut this down right now, I'll have to report it." Her words hung in the air like thunder before a storm. I wanted to tell her off, but Ethan was watching me, and I didn't want to teach him that yelling solves problems. So I forced a smile. "We'll be fine, Karen. Thanks for your concern." She huffed, spun around, and stormed back to her porch. For a moment, it seemed like she'd just let it go. Neighbors kept stopping by, laughing, sipping lemonade. Ethan's confidence started creeping back, and I thought maybe we were in the clear. But then, the sirens. I froze. Down the street, a police car slowly rolled in, lights flashing. Ethan's jaw dropped, his tiny hands trembling as he clutched the pitcher. "Dad, are they here for me?" he whispered. My stomach sank. I wanted to say no. I wanted to assure him. But deep down, I already knew who had made that call. And sure enough, when the officers stepped out and walked towards us, Karen was standing smugly on her porch, arms folded like a queen watching her subjects obey. Ethan's lemonade stand had just become a crime scene. The moment those flashing lights washed over our street, everything changed. The laughter, the clinking of coins, the cheerful chatter, it all froze in midair like someone had hit the pause button. Two officers stepped out of the car, adjusting their belts as they walked up the driveway. One of them, tall with a kind face, gave me a nod. The other one looked more serious, his gaze shifting from Ethan's lemonade stand to me. "Afternoon, sir," the tall one said. "We got a call about an unlicensed business operating here." Ethan's eyes went wide, and I could see his little lip trembling. He looked up at me and whispered, "Dad, am I going to jail?" That broke me. I crouched down and pulled him close. "No, buddy, absolutely not. You didn't do anything wrong." Karen, of course, couldn't keep her mouth shut. From across the street, she shouted, "Yes, he did! This is against HOA rules, and you're ignoring the health code! That child is handling food without gloves, without sanitation! This is unacceptable!" The neighbors started mothering, some shaking their heads, others looking annoyed. I noticed Mrs. Wilson, who lived 2 doors down, whispering, "It's just lemonade, for heaven's sakes." The tall officer gave me a sympathetic look. "Sir, technically, in some areas, food and drink stands do require a permit, but this is a kid's lemonade stand." He leaned down and smiled at Ethan. "How much have you made today, champ?" Ethan sniffled and held up his little cash jar. $12? The officer chuckled. "Well, that's impressive. Not sure you're running a black market empire here." Even some neighbors laughed softly at that. But Karen wasn't amused. She stormed closer, pointing a manicured finger. "Are you seriously going to let this continue? It's unsanitary, it's unregulated, and it violates HOA bylaws. If you won't enforce it, I'll escalate this to the board and the city." Her voice was shrill, slicing through the summer air. Ethan clung to my arm, his face buried in my shirt. I could feel his little heart pounding. I tried to stay calm, though every fiber of me wanted to explode. "Officer, with all due respect, this is just a child having fun. The neighborhood supports him. Nobody's being forced to buy lemonade. We've been clean, careful, and safe." The serious officer finally spoke up. His voice was low, firm. "Ma'am," he said, turning to Karen, "unless this child is running a 24-hour food truck, this isn't a police matter. We have bigger issues to handle." Karen's mouth fell open. She looked like someone had just slapped her with a wet towel. "Excuse me? You're just going to ignore this blatant violation?" "Ma'am," he repeated, a bit sharper, "it's lemonade. If you want to take it up with your HOA, go ahead, but we're not shutting this down." Ethan's head popped up. For the first time since they arrived, a flicker of hope crossed his face. But Karen wasn't done. Oh no! She spun toward the neighbors, throwing her arms in the air. "You people are enabling this nonsense! What if someone gets food poisoning? What if a child gets sick? You'll regret this when the board fines you all for non-compliance!" The street buzzed with murmurs. Some neighbors rolled their eyes, others just walked away, shaking their heads. But then something unexpected happened. Mrs. Wilson, the sweet elderly woman who always baked cookies for the block party, stepped forward. "Karen, you need to stop. This boy is doing something good. He's learning responsibility, he's having fun, and he's bringing people together. No one here wants your drama." The crowd nodded, a ripple of support spreading. Even Mr. Thompson added, "Honestly, Karen, maybe you should try some lemonade yourself. Might sweeten you up a bit." The laughter that followed was like music. Ethan smiled shyly, and for the first time, Karen looked cornered. But she wasn't finished. Her voice dropped low, dangerous. "Fine. If the police won't act, and you neighbors won't act, then I'll take this straight to the HOA board, and when they hear about this violation, you'll all be sorry." She stormed off, heels clacking against the pavement like gunshots. The police gave me an apologetic nod, then headed back to their car. One of them leaned out of the window before they left. "Kid, keep up the good work. Best lemonade stand I've seen in a while." The car rolled away, and slowly life returned to normal. Neighbors lined up again, coins and dollars ready, eager to show Ethan support. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Because when Karen made a threat, she always kept it. And the worst part? I had no idea how ugly things were about to get. For a couple of days after the police visit, things actually felt calm. Ethan was back at his stand every afternoon, smiling, serving lemonade, and proudly counting his earnings. The neighbors kept coming, maybe even more than before, like they wanted to prove to Karen that her tantrum hadn't scared anyone away. I'll admit, I started to believe maybe it was over. Maybe Karen had just blown off steam and moved on. But I should have known better. It happened on a Thursday evening. I came home from work, tired and sweaty, dreaming about a cold shower, when I noticed a bright white envelope taped to my front door. Bold red letters screamed across the front, "Notice of violation." My stomach dropped. I ripped it open and started reading. The letter was from the HOA board. Apparently, a formal complaint had been submitted regarding an unauthorized business operating on the property. The letter stated that per HOA guidelines, no resident was allowed to run any kind of commercial activity without prior approval. If we didn't shut it down immediately, fines would be issued, up to $250 per day. I could practically hear Karen's smug voice echoing between the lines of that letter. "Dad?" Ethan's voice piped up behind me. He was holding his little cash jar, his face glowing. "Guess what? I made $20 today. People are really liking my lemonade." I quickly folded the letter and stuffed it into my pocket. "That's awesome, buddy. I'm proud of you." But inside, I was boiling. $250 a day for lemonade? This wasn't just Karen being annoying anymore. This was her using the HOA as a weapon. Later that night, I told my wife about it. She sighed, rubbing her temples. "She's not going to stop, is she?" "Not until she gets her way," I muttered. Ethan overheard us. His little voice cracked when he asked, "Do I have to stop?" That broke me. He looked so small, clutching that cash jar like it was his lifeline. I knelt down, hugged him, and said, "No, you did nothing wrong. We're not quitting just because someone doesn't like it." But as the days went on, the pressure built. First, I got another letter. This one reminded me that continued violations could result not only in fines, but also legal action. Then a notice showed up in our mailbox announcing the issue of unauthorized business would be discussed at the next HOA meeting. And of course, word spread quickly. Some neighbors were furious at Karen, not at us. Mrs. Wilson even came over one evening with a tray of cookies. "Don't you dare let that woman crush Ethan's spirit," she said firmly. "We'll fight this." But not everyone felt that way. A couple of families avoided us, probably worried about getting dragged into HOA drama. One guy even muttered, "Rules are rules," as he walked by. It felt like the neighborhood was dividing into two camps, those who stood with Ethan's lemonade stand and those who just wanted Karen off their backs. The worst part was seeing Ethan change. At first, he brushed it off, but as more envelopes showed up, I could see the doubt in his eyes. One afternoon, he asked me, "Dad, am I making everyone mad? Should I just stop?" I shook my head, forcing a smile I didn't feel. "No, buddy, you're making people happy. That's what matters." But when I said that, I caught a glimpse of Karen across the street, smirking as she watered her lawn. She looked like a predator who had cornered her prey. And then came the meeting. The HOA gatherings were usually boring. Talk about landscaping, pool maintenance, parking spaces. But this time, the room was packed. Neighbors filled every chair, and some even stood in the back. You could feel the tension buzzing like electricity. Karen sat at the front with the board members, her arms crossed, her lips curled into that self-satisfied smile. When it was her turn to speak, she wasted no time. This so-called lemonade stand is a violation of our bylaws. It is unsanitary, unlicensed, and disruptive. If we allow this, what's next? Food trucks in driveways? Flea markets in front yards? Rules are in place for a reason, and this family is openly defying them. Her words stung, but I stood up. My legs were shaking, but I forced myself to look around the room. With all due respect, this is a 9-year-old selling lemonade. He's not hurting anyone. In fact, he's brought this neighborhood together more than anything else I've seen in years. People are laughing, talking, smiling. Isn't that what community is supposed to be about? The room erupted into murmurs. Some nodded, some frowned, and Karen shot me a look that could have burned a hole through steel. The board huddled together, whispering. Finally, the president spoke. "We'll take this matter under review. A decision will be issued within a week." Karen smirked like she had already won. And as I walked out of that room, Ethan's little hand gripping mine tightly, I couldn't help but wonder, would they really shut him down? That week felt like the longest week of my life. Every day when I came home, I half expected to find another violation notice slapped on our door. Ethan tried to stay positive, but I could see the worry creeping in. He wasn't bouncing around the way he used to. Some days he didn't even set up his lemonade stand until I encouraged him. And all the while, Karen lurked, sitting on her porch like a hawk, arms folded, sunglasses hiding her eyes, watching, waiting. Finally, the envelope came. Thick, official, with the HOA logo at the top. My hands shook as I tore it open. Effective immediately, the lemonade stand must cease operations. Continued defiance will result in daily fines. It felt like a punch to the gut. I looked over at Ethan, who was coloring at the kitchen table. How was I supposed to tell him? When I finally broke the news, his shoulders slumped. "So, it's over," he whispered. I tried to stay strong. Not if I can help it. Because something inside me snapped. Enough was enough. Karen might have the HOA on her side, but she didn't have the whole neighborhood, and I wasn't about to let her crush my son's spirit over a cup of lemonade. That evening, I made some calls. First to Mrs. Wilson, then to Mr. Thompson, then to a handful of other neighbors who'd been supportive from the start. And before I knew it, word spread like wildfire. By Saturday morning, our street looked different. When Ethan went outside, he froze. All along the block, people had set up their own little stands. Mrs. Wilson had a table with chocolate chip cookies. Mr. Thompson was grilling hot dogs. Some kids from around the block had a table with iced tea, brownies, even popsicles. It was like a mini street fair. Ethan's eyes went wide. "Dad, what's happening?" I grinned. "They're standing with you, buddy." And all the while, Karen lurked, sitting on her porch like a hawk, arms folded, sunglasses hiding her eyes, watching, waiting. Finally, the envelope came, thick, official, with the HOA logo at the top. My hands shook as I tore it open. Effective immediately, the lemonade stand must cease operations. Continued defiance will result in daily fines. And all the while, Karen lurked, sitting on her porch like a hawk, arms folded, sunglasses hiding her eyes, watching, waiting. Finally, the envelope came, thick, official, with the HOA logo at the top. My hands shook as I tore it open. Effective immediately, the lemonade stand must cease operations. Continued defiance will result in daily fines. It felt like a punch to the gut. I looked over at Ethan, who was coloring at the kitchen table. How was I supposed to tell him? When I finally broke the news, his shoulders slumped. "So, it's over," he whispered. I tried to stay strong. Not if I can help it. Because something inside me snapped. Enough was enough. Karen might have the HOA on her side, but she didn't have the whole neighborhood, and I wasn't about to let her crush my son's spirit over a cup of lemonade. That evening, I made some calls, first to Mrs. Wilson, then to Mr. Thompson, then to a handful of other neighbors who'd been supportive from the start. And before I knew it, word spread like wildfire. By Saturday morning, our street looked different. When Ethan went outside, he froze. All along the block, people had set up their own little stands. Mrs. Wilson had a table with chocolate chip cookies. Mr. Thompson was grilling hot dogs. Some kids from around the block had a table with iced tea, brownies, even popsicles. It was like a mini street fair. Ethan's eyes went wide. "Dad, what's happening?" I grinned. "They're standing with you, buddy." And sure enough, taped to the front of our driveway was a big hand-painted sign that read, "Neighborhood Lemonade Day," in support of Ethan. Cars started slowing down, people walked over, laughter filled the street again. It wasn't just a lemonade stand anymore. It was a movement. Karen, of course, was losing her mind. She stormed out of her house, her face red as a tomato. "This is outrageous! You're all violating the rules! Do you realize how many fines you're racking up?" But no one paid her any mind. Mrs. Wilson even waved a cookie at her and said, "Lighten up, Karen. Have a snack." Karen screeched, "This isn't funny. I'll call the board. I'll call the police again." That's when something incredible happened. The police did show up, but not because Karen called them. No, they showed up because one of the neighbors had invited them. 2 officers strolled in, grabbed cups of lemonade, and paid Ethan with big smiles. One of them even said loud enough for Karen to hear, "Best lemonade in town. We should shut down Starbucks before we shut down this kid." The whole street roared with laughter. Except Karen, of course. She stood there, fists clenched, shaking like she was about to explode. And then she snapped. "You people are going to regret this. This is not over." She stormed back into her house, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. For the rest of the day, the block party went on without her. Ethan was beaming, handing out lemonade like he was the mayor of the neighborhood. For the first time in weeks, I saw pure joy on his face again. But deep down, I knew Karen wasn't finished. And sure enough, she wasn't. Because the very next morning, another letter arrived. This one wasn't just from the HOA, it was stamped with the city's seal. When I saw that envelope with the city's seal on it, my stomach twisted into knots. This wasn't just HOA nonsense anymore. This was official. I sat at the kitchen table, Ethan leaning over my shoulder as I read. The letter said the city had received a complaint about unlicensed food sales and that an inspector would be sent out to investigate. If violations were found, fines could be issued. Ethan's face went pale. "Dad, are they going to shut me down forever?" I took a deep breath, trying to sound calm even though my chest was pounding. "We'll deal with it, buddy. Don't worry. You didn't do anything wrong." But truthfully, I was furious. Karen had gone too far. She wasn't just being annoying anymore, she was dragging city officials into this, trying to crush a child's dream with bureaucracy. The next afternoon, right on schedule, a white city vehicle pulled up in front of our house. Out stepped a middle-aged man with a clipboard, his tie already loosened in the heat. "Afternoon," he said politely. "I'm with the city health department. Got a complaint about an unlicensed food stand operating here." Karen was already on her porch, arms crossed, watching like a vulture waiting for scraps. I forced a smile. "Yes, Inspector, this is my son Ethan. He's been selling lemonade out here, just for fun. The neighbors love it." The inspector crouched down, looking at Ethan. "How's business, young man?" He nervously held up his jar of coins. Good, I guess. People like it." The inspector chuckled softly, then stood back up. "All right, let's take a look." He walked over to the little stand, checked the pitcher, the cups, even peeked under the table. He scribbled a few notes, nodded, and finally sighed. "All right, technically, the city doesn't enforce permits for children's stands like this. The complaint was filed, so I had to come check. But everything looks fine. No violations here." My chest loosened with relief. Ethan's eyes lit up, but before we could celebrate, Karen exploded. "What?" she shrieked, storming across the street. "Are you blind? That's clearly unsanitary. He's handling money and then touching cups. He's serving without gloves. You have to shut this down." The inspector straightened, his expression hardening. "Ma'am, with all due respect, my job is to enforce city code, not crush a child's lemonade stand. If you continue harassing this family, I'll be forced to file a report against you." The crowd of neighbors who had already gathered to watch erupted in cheers. Mrs. Wilson clapped her hands. Mr. Thompson shouted, "That's right," and even the officers from last time drove by slowly, honking their horn in support. Ethan beamed from ear to ear. I'll never forget the way he looked up at me and whispered, "Dad, we won." Karen stood frozen, her face purple with rage. For a moment, I thought she might actually scream, but instead, she turned on her heel, marched back to her house, and slammed the door. The inspector gave us a smile before heading back to his vehicle. "Keep up the good work, kid, and next time someone bothers you, just remember, you're not breaking any laws." The neighbors crowded around, buying lemonade, patting Ethan on the back, turning the afternoon into yet another celebration. The air was filled with laughter, clinking cups, and that sweet smell of lemons. It felt like the war was finally over. But as the sun set and the street grew quiet, I noticed Karen's blinds twitch. She was still watching. And knowing her, I doubted she was finished. Still, I didn't know then that the final twist was coming, something no one, not even Karen, could have predicted. After the inspector cleared us, it felt like the whole neighborhood was buzzing with energy. People weren't just supporting Ethan anymore, they were rallying behind him. What started as a little stand with a pitcher of lemonade had become a symbol of standing up to pettiness, rules taken too far, and of course, Karen. But Karen wasn't letting go quietly. 2 days later, she posted in the neighborhood Facebook group a long rant accusing us of endangering public safety, corrupting the community, and mocking the HOA. She even wrote that anyone buying lemonade from Ethan was complicit in unlawful activity. The comments, though, they didn't go her way. One by one, neighbors jumped in. "This is a kid, Karen. You've lost your mind. Honestly, his lemonade is better than Starbucks anyway." The post backfired spectacularly. Instead of isolating us, she made herself look even more bitter. And that's when the idea hit me. If Karen wanted to escalate, so would we. The following Saturday, we held Ethan's Lemonade Festival. It wasn't just a stand anymore. The whole block transformed. Neighbors set up booths, kids painted signs, local musicians brought guitars, and even a food truck showed up after hearing about it online. We put out balloons, streamers, and tables. The air smelled of popcorn, burgers, cookies, and of course, fresh lemonade. Ethan stood proudly at his booth, now decorated with a big banner, "Ethan's Lemonade, the stand that stood tall." People came not just from our street, but from other parts of town. Word had spread through social media, and folks showed up just to buy a cup to spite Karen. Some brought their kids, others just wanted to support the cause. Karen, oh, she was livid. She stood on her lawn shouting across the street, "This is illegal! You're all trespassing HOA property rights! You'll all be fined!" But nobody cared. In fact, someone shouted back, "Karen, grab a cup or go inside!" And the whole street burst out laughing. And then came the twist that sealed her fate. The mayor showed up. Yes, the actual mayor of our city, with a small entourage. Turns out someone had tagged him in the viral Facebook post about Karen's rant. He came to see what the fuss was about, and to show support. He walked right up to Ethan's stand, cameras flashing from local reporters who had followed the story. With a big grin, he held up a cup of lemonade and said, "This is what community looks like. Neighbors coming together, supporting kids, and enjoying the little things in life. I'm proud of this neighborhood." The crowd cheered. Ethan's face lit up brighter than the sun. Karen? Oh, she shrieked, "You can't be serious! He's breaking rules!" The mayor turned to her calmly and said, "Ma'am, the only rule I see here is kindness, and maybe you should try following it." That was it. Karen stormed back inside her house and for once stayed there. By the end of the day, Ethan had made over $1,000, not just from lemonade sales, but from donations, tips, and people slipping him bills just to keep the stand going. He was glowing with pride, counting the money with shaky little hands, whispering, "Dad, I can't believe it." I put my arm around him and said, "You earned every bit of it, buddy. You stood tall. You didn't give up." And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't just about lemonade anymore. It was about teaching my son that sometimes life throws you a Karen. Sometimes people will try to tear you down for no reason. But if you stand strong, if you've got good people behind you, you can turn bitterness into something sweet. The next morning, I noticed something new. Karen's blinds were shut tight. For the first time since we'd moved in, her porch was empty. She wasn't watching, she wasn't yelling, she wasn't reporting. She was silent. And Ethan's lemonade stand? It became a summer tradition. Every year, people would come back, remembering the story of how one little stand and one stubborn Karen brought an entire town together. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge is just a glass of lemonade.